The battle at Omaha Beach was part of the D-Day landings that took place during the Second World War. After Germany's invasion of the USSR, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin appealed to Britain to open a second front against Hitler in Western Europe. When the United States joined the war effort, it was decided that a major offensive, beginning in France, would take place in the spring of 1944. Successful Allied invasions of both Sicily and the Italian mainland in 1943 were followed by a large build-up of soldiers, warships and equipment in southern England. By the summer of 1944, the invasion force was ready. 5 beaches along the Normandy coast were chosen as landing points. British forces would land at the beaches codenamed Sword and Gold, the Canadians at Juneau and the Americans at Utah and Omaha. On the 6th of June, the soldiers left England to take part in the largest amphibious military assault in history. The battle started at around 6 AM when naval vessels opened fire on German defensive positions. Bomber planes followed up this initial attack, but due to cloud cover and poor visibility, they dropped their explosives too far inland, leaving the strong points undamaged. At 6:30 AM, 40 landing craft containing around 1,500 men began reaching the beach. Underwater mines and German artillery sunk some of the vessels before they arrived on shore, and strong currents forced many craft away from their intended landing location. As the first transports arrived, soldiers were hit with mortars and machine gun fire, forcing the survivors to find cover behind obstacles on the beach. Over 30 amphibious tanks were intended to support the infantry, but launched too far out, many sunk before making land. The few tanks that reached Omaha were targeted by German artillery. Due to the intense gunfire, only a limited area was cleared of obstacles for further deployments. So when the second assault wave began arriving, the transporters had difficulty landing. As soldiers disembarked in deep water, they became an easy target for German gunners, and many drowned attempting to get ashore. To avoid the mistakes of earlier, more tanks were launched closer to land. The tanks were successful in reaching the shore and opened fire at German defences, although their effectiveness was limited due to obstacles hindering mobility. Landing craft continued delivering reinforcements as soldiers started reaching the sea wall. Beyond the wall were minefields and barbed wire. Unable to move forward, the area became overcrowded. At around 8 AM at the far side of the beach, soldiers began clearing wire and slowly moving forward. They continued to come under fire, but as more Americans reached high ground, strong points were attacked and most Germans either surrendered or were killed, although some continued to hold out and were still hitting soldiers on the beach. This breakthrough was followed by units in the centre, who also started moving up from the beach. Despite the threat from minefields at this exit, the Americans continued forward and faced only limited resistance to their advance. After reaching the high ground, remaining opposition was halted and the Americans moved inland with the intention of taking Verville from the rear. Around 10 AM at the other end of Omaha, facing heavy opposition and with no clear exit path, a unit of Rangers was forced to scale the cliffs. Upon reaching the top, they attacked German positions. Further groups of men began finding paths up to the high ground. Battleships resumed shelling German positions as more soldiers and equipment arrived on shore. The naval fire helped destroy a number of artillery guns and strongpoints and enabled the remaining men on the beach to reach the exit points. German positions were stormed and cleared. By around 2 PM, most of Omaha Beach was under US control. As they moved inland, despite taking further casualties and losing a number of tanks along the way, the Americans took the small village of Colville-sur-Mer. Despite launching counterattacks, the Germans failed to retake the village, and the Americans continued to advance. At Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, the Americans attacked the village from the east, but the Germans held the position. Further attempts were made with support from tanks and offshore naval guns, but the village was not captured until the next day. Due to the heavy losses suffered earlier in the day, the Americans did not attempt to capture Verville-sur-Mer, and the units of men attempting to take Verville from the rear were prevented from doing so by German defenders. At the end of the battle, the Americans had lost over 800 soldiers. The German losses numbered around 2,000. This was a victory for the Americans. The invasion on D-Day began the two-front war that Hitler had hoped to avoid. Although they suffered high casualty rates, the Allies quickly advanced to Paris, and by the end of August, France had been fully liberated.